Welcome, everyone, to the Open Channel podcast, where we share through conscious conversation the invitation of further embodiment of unity and higher states of conscious awareness. I'm Shaunna Green.
And I'm Avalina, Maline. Welcome to this co-created space for people who want to connect and remember the core essence of who they are. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so grateful to have you here with us.
Alrighty.
Okay, here we go.
Fixed.
Welcome, everyone. So glad to be here. And so happy to have you, Kiara Windrider, with us. Thank you for joining us in our conversation of whatever wants to come through. Whatever we explore.
Thank you for just being here in community, everyone.
Yeah.
We're just glad to be together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, this is these kind of conversations, you never know where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's like, this is where the juice is. It's like we're tapping into something so much bigger than our own personal stories and our own lives. And, somehow we're connecting with a planetary level event. And here we are, just, one little piece of it, but all of it at the same time.
Yeah. So beautiful.
To get to know you both and connect together in this way and see where we want to go.
Yeah.
And we are creators. This is a huge time of change, and we're right up in the front lines.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's so important, like you said, just having the conversations, like this is where the magic is, because it's keeping our human side into it, keeping the fact that, keeping it simple and just keeping it real. Lots of times we like to talk about all the events that are happening and using all this incredible language and all that, high tech and energies that are coming in. But really, it's really just how we're dealing with it right here and now, like how we're being in it right here and now, how we're communicating with it and being with each other and just living it, just being that.
And just how it feels in the body too. Just the very simple human. I love that you mentioned that, Avalina, the human aspect of things that the physical form is experiencing this in unexpected ways, and just being with the present moment of what's in the body is really simple but profound at the same time.
Yeah. And, being human is such a mystery. What does it really mean to be human? I don't think any of us really know.
No.
We think we know based on whatever experiences we've had or expectations or stories from people. But it's like, are we human yet? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Restoring that blueprint. It's a journey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different levels of different awarenesses and to me, I don't think there's any really fine point to it. I mean, I think the human's going to continue to evolve even when we get, to the point where we're, restored to the original intent. But then it's like, where do we go from there? It's like, there's anything's possible.
Yeah. Well, it's true. It's like, I don't think there's even an original intent. And I feel like things are in evolution. God is in evolution. There's never an end to it.
Yeah.
So it's like, but it's up to us in this moment to follow the stream and see where it wants to take us. And most of our lives, we end up, we spend so much time, effort to resist that flow, to, hold on to our tiny little limited ideas of who we are and what we think we should be doing on this earth. So, and especially in times of trouble. It's like we tend to hunker down and make ourselves small so we feel secure. Is that helping? Or, is there something bigger waiting for us to surrender to and grow into?
Yeah. It's just walking the journey.
So, Avalina, why don't you tell us what it means to be human for you?
That's a big question. I'm still working on that. I don't know. Every day right now feels so different. It's like just riding that wave, and it feels so elated at times, and then so much empowerment. Like I'm feeling almost like, yes, I'm human, but there's this fullness that's happening that I have not experienced before. Um, and just really creating, like I'm feeling like as a human, just really creating anything, everything I want, every relationship, every, my relationship with food. It's so dynamic lately. It's just fascinating to me. I'm finding it so joyful and incredible and challenging, like all of it at the same time. It's such I'm so grateful. Like it's such a privilege to be here in this human suit. I mean, to me, it feels like it's the most unique experience, probably, at least at the moment, in the universe, to be here right now and experiencing the challenges and the shifts and changes that we're all experiencing. It feels very like revolutionary, like for the whole species right now. Like this is it. This is like the like all eyes are on us in the whole universe, and it's just it's it's such a it's amazing experience to be able to feel the third density in this way, and to have to really bring ourselves into a whole different experience rather than being in the higher realms, and to come in here and join the two together in the body. It's just I'm just finding it fascinating.
Well, as you're speaking, the image that comes to me is like, we're looking at ourselves under the microscope from this other place that we also exist, and saying, oh, like, look at this person over there, and look what they're doing, and look at all the crazy stuff we're going through as a human culture, and having a great laugh at our own expense, and realizing that all the tragedies and fears and traumas that we think are real are just part of the movie, and somehow we created it, we wrote the script, and we are learning from it, and we'll solve it, and that's part of why we're here. And from that space, to me, it's like, wow, being human is just such an adventure. Not because there's a goal, but simply because there isn't. Because we don't have to put anything inside the box. And there's infinite possibilities. And we take them one at a time, knowing that there's no wrong answers, knowing that there's no false steps we can take. So that makes it much freer. It's like, okay, if I know that there's nothing I can do wrong, and the idea of right and wrong is part of what we've taken to be human. But if we look at ourselves from behind the microscope, there's no wrong. It's just all an adventure. That's so freeing.
Yeah.
What about you, Shaunna?
I'm so struck by the pace of everything and the way the flow feels. I'm just really fascinated by how the shifting changes the feel of everything in the moments that continue. I just keep noticing how even though I'm, Kiara, you mentioned all of the different experiences, and we're getting to sort of watch and be part of the movie. And so I'm kind of watching these things unfold, and yet the feeling of change is different depending on the situation, the day. I think I'm just so fascinated by that. I mean, what you've both said are, such true expressions. We're just seeing what's possible, and with our intentions, we're creating a new space that hasn't been developed or discovered because it's never been. And yet at the same time, there is a current underneath it that feels universally, I guess, constant, even though it's changing. That sounds like it doesn't make any sense, but the way the change feels has a higher level of consistency to it in my felt experience. And so I feel like I'm part of this bigger unfolding, even though the change keeps shifting. Does that make any sense at all? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, what I hear from that is that there's a there's a plan, a divine plan of some sort, and when we when we get close to that, to experiencing that, to living that, there's a vibrational feel to it, and that's what remains constant. So, in the midst of all the changes and chaos, um, all the appearances, that's what remains constant. The knowing that there's a divine plan, that everything is unfolding. Even though there's no one direction we can go, there's a feeling of being close to fulfilling that plan, and when it's not happening. And what I'm feeling, and as you're saying, this is what comes to mind for me, is that I'm experiencing so much peace these days,
Mm.
no matter what's going on. There's so much crazy shit happening out there. And at the same time, I feel so much, light and peace and actually a joy even.
Yeah.
Like I don't take things so personally as a human family because I know that there's something bigger than all of this, and even bigger
Yeah.
than what our minds can tell us, because all we know how to understand something is through the avenue of the right and wrong that our mind creates. And the media is always telling us this is right, this is wrong, we are right, they are wrong, and all the infinite permutations of that. And yet there's no right and wrong. So once you really know that, nothing can shake you up, nothing can throw you off balance. And that's, I think a lot of people are realizing that. It's like underneath all of the craziness, whether it has to do with, the C word, whether it has to do with the P and K word, like,
All the curse words.
yeah, and all the political, you know, stuff. So, I mean, right now, what's happening, for instance, there's so many different interpretations of what's going on in Ukraine. And depending on what side you're taking, depending on your perspective, it's wonderful what's happening. The deep state is finally being thrown down, or there's a crazy madman out there and he's megalomaniac out to control and take over the world. And okay, what is the truth? And then we get so identified with one version of the truth, and then everybody else becomes wrong. And then we get so identified with asserting our rightness, then we get caught up in the whole duality once again. So yes, yeah, I can see the big picture. I can hold the possibility of something bigger than we know. Um, I can see that there's something going on that's beyond what people think or what appearances may look like. And I still don't have to be identified with my version of truth. I
Yeah.
still trust that there's something bigger than all of us, each of us, white hats or black hats,
Mhm.
that's in control.
Yeah. I love that you're talking about this right and wrong because bringing that down on the micro level, like for on the personal journey, for me, like that whole aspect of being right and wrong was a huge piece on
Mm,
my journey that I had to overcome because my parents had completely ingrained, this is right, this is wrong, like they mastered that, right? So that it's that whole judgment, and that when I let go of that piece of judging myself, wow, I mean, it's just it was such a shift for me. And we take ourselves so seriously. It's like
Yeah.
I mean, we really like the whole right and wrong. It's like if we just let go and enjoy ourselves, um, that piece just naturally falls away. Like you don't even have to do anything. It's just like the other side of the coin. It just you just let it go. Um,
Mm.
yeah,
Well, it's really just energy. I mean, really,
yeah,
all of it is energy flowing through whatever the dynamics are. They have different names depending on what happens to be in mainstream news or not, but it's really just energy and the
Mm.
flow of what's moving through, whether it's a tug to see if people will fall into fear again or not. It's kind of the
Mm.
continuation of themes of trust falls with the universe. And so I find it so fascinating that as we continue to see different forms of this, that it affects people differently, different names
Mm.
for that energy flow, different names for the type of tug back into fear, draw people in such different ways.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, COVID's not working anymore. Oh, war.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Well, let's get more specific about
exactly.
that. Okay, so we had this whole COVID narrative, and that's falling apart. Now we have this war narrative. What's really going on there? So what
Hmm.
Yeah.
what what do you guys think is going on?
I think it's just another avenue. It's all, being created and manifesting. We're going to bring up more shadow and more shadow, and until it's all revealed in whatever form it takes. Um, it really ultimately doesn't matter, because we as humans, we have to have our back up against the wall in order to change, in order to see. So um, it's just another face to the same thing.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think there are more invitations and
Mhm.
opportunities for people to um, discover faith they didn't realize was possible for them.
Hmm. Even if they have to go through all kinds of turmoil
Mhm.
inside themselves and their families and their national, economic, political systems,
Yeah.
even though people have to feel like they're at on the brink of nuclear war or whatever the story might be.
Yeah.
Mosquito.
Oh, mosquito. Are they
I
pretty
love how that
active
just
at
rippled
night
through
there,
our
Kiara?
conversation. That was awesome.
It was a
Yeah,
punctuation mark.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So how about you, Kiara? What do you think about the energies and the names and the what's unfolding that way? Do you see patterns that you notice?
Oh, obviously. Well, I'm a little bit um, privileged in that way because ever since my college days, I had majored in peace studies, and so I was seeing how the system works. So back in my days in college, we were looking at the Vietnam War, we were looking at the Cuban Missile Crisis, and then looking at all the wars that followed: the Korean War, the two Iraqi wars, in Afghanistan, and Libya, and Palestine. All and what I'm noticing is that they're not different wars. It's the same old, repeated over and over again because people haven't realized what's going on. So they see it as something new just because they are short sighted, because they can only see so far ahead. But once you start seeing the big picture, it's the same narrative, just repeated over and over. Um, and the bad guys and the good guys are not who you think they are. In fact, sometimes
Yeah.
they may be exactly the opposite of
Yeah.
what we're told. And once we realize that, it's whether it has to do with 9/11, whether it has to do with any excuse for war, um, you know, whether it has to do with elections and who wins and who loses and why. It's like I'm being very vague deliberately because this is on YouTube.
Yeah.
So I know what knocks us off and what doesn't. But I
Yeah.
think people listening who know what we're talking about will probably say yes. I can see that. Um, and right now, it's like, okay, so there's one chap going into another country, seeming to be a bad guy, seeming to want to megalomaniacally take over a country. But what's going on behind that?
Mm-hmm.
Why? What's the history? And what's the war media doing to create a certain narrative, trying to make people believe something? And why are people not able to see past that? I think that for me is the biggest question. Why are people allowing themselves to fall into the same old narrative over and over again, giving up their sovereignty, giving up their discernment, just because someone tells them what's right and wrong and what's real and false? Um, so that to me is the big question. And what I see with all this is that people are waking up. People are realizing it's like one time too much, too far. And people are saying, okay, this is the same old playbook, but something is going on behind the scenes. What is it? Why are we being told the same story um, that we were told during the weapons of mass distraction in the Iraqi war? Why is the same false flag being played out now as was happening with 9/11 or with the Gulf of Tonkin or whatever the assassination of Duke Ferdinand? Same old stuff. But because we have lost track of history, because we see only what's in front of us and only what we are told, because we don't have take the time to really study, understand, discern, it's easy for us to fall into the playbook. And that to me is like what we're now waking up to, more and more people everywhere. And that's the good news. No matter how it unfolds, I feel like it's going to really go in a direction where we finally wake up, where we finally, dethrone the elite that's been holding on for all these hundreds of years, thousands of years. They're finally being dethroned. Some people call it the deep state. Some people call it well, I won't say what because we will be
Yeah.
deplatformed. So,
Yeah, it's definitely like spiraling, like culminating to a point, that pressure. It's like that pressure cooker of people just being, it's like, okay, another story here, another story here. And it's like the intensity is, we're finally getting to that point where it's going to shift to the other side where everyone's going to be awake. I mean, you get your back pushed up against the wall this many times. It's like this is
mm,
it. This is it. And I feel like, in the not so distant future, so many everyone's going to be awake, and it's just going to be a whole different scene.
yeah, yeah. Well, there's an exponential quality to this. Astrologically, we are going through the same um, events that we were going through during the First World War.
Yeah,
The
and
lead
then
up to
and
the First
us
World
has its Pluto return also,
War.
which is
Yep.
huge. Yeah.
Okay. Well, say more about that.
Yeah.
What's that mean for you?
Well, I don't know. I don't know a whole lot about astrology, but I know that it's the return of an opportunity for rebirth, because the US
Mm-hmm.
was born on that day. So when Pluto comes
Yes.
around, it's the time to reevaluate what was the original intention of the birth, and to revisit what was desired, and to relook at that again and see where, what are we actually doing? Where have we gotten off track here? And what's happening versus what we
Mm-hmm.
really want? So it's just that opportunity to really see ourselves as a country,
Mm,
and in the U.S. is kind of, kind of all eyes on us because, we're kind of that in the forefront of everything. So it's bigger than just the U.S. It kind of ripples out to everything.
mm,
So just
yes.
supporting and alignment with everything that's happening, the opportunity to resurrect ourselves. You know.
Okay, and what's the other side of it? What if we don't resurrect ourselves?
Hmm.
Or what if we
Yeah, I
don't
tend not to
choose
think
to?
about that one.
Yeah.
Because Pluto is death and rebirth.
Yeah.
Can't ignore one or the other.
Yeah, I think if it did, it would still give us an opportunity to rebirth in a different way. It would just may look completely different. It may look like something that we weren't expecting, and that's okay. You know, if say for example the U.S. completely dissolved, or America, whichever, you know, corporation or you want to call it, it would just we would define ourselves differently. We'd find a way and make it our own. It would still be a rebirth either way, I think. And I think depending on what we as collective want to do with that, how we want to intend to build our future and where we are. And I think with everyone waking up, I think either way we can't lose. I think either way it's going to be amazing.
Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so curious about what you're both experiencing with the middle world patterns that you see shifting around you in your part of the world, in your little nook. What are you noticing shifting, and have there been moments that have surprised you with either evidence of new discovery for people that you had experienced in certain patterns or something? I'm just curious what it's like for you.
What do you mean by middle world? Are you talking about
Well,
this realm, the third
I
dimension?
mean, like either with just as you walk through your daily life, whether it's moving from one area of the country to another, say you're traveling, or in interactions with family, or in a workplace situation, what are you experiencing that is surprising with shift? What are you noticing in people?
Good question. What I'm noticing is that there's two different realities kind of sliding on top of each other, and maybe more. But one reality is what seems to be going on, what people believe, what what rules people follow, the mandates, the masking, the lockdowns, the curfews, you know, the way that people perceive this innocent little virus, which isn't. And then the other
I
reality.
love that. It's innocent. So beautiful. I'm sorry, I have to laugh.
Yeah, because what makes a virus so deadly is not the virus itself, but our ideas about the virus, right? And if you're
Exactly.
constantly told this is deadly, this is killing people, this is the ultimate end of the world, and you're responsible for it because you're not masking yourself with social distancing, guilt, shame, blame, then that's totally disempowering. And we end up feeling like we're little drones in this society where we have a few queen bees who are telling everybody else what to do. Um, and that's, we've given up our sovereignty. We've ended up believing that. So that's one reality. And I see that everywhere. It's like, people follow rules because that's the only thing they know how to do, because if they don't, they're going to be punished. And the other side of it is like I'm just floating, not floating, but I'm kind of observing all of that. And I feel like I'm in a different reality completely. It's like I never wander around with a mask on. Nobody bothers me. Um, Even in the airplane, it's like, okay, I just smile at the flight attendant and okay, fine. And other people are feeling the same way more and more. Um, I see with this narrative on the action in Ukraine, I don't call it an invasion because it isn't. I don't call it a war because it isn't, but everybody else is. And what I'm seeing is that, yeah, if I look deep enough, if I look behind and through the narrative, the observable patterns, it's the cleansing of deep state installations, of bioweapons factories, of money laundering games, that the politicians in every single country have been have been doing. And in that part of the world is perhaps one of the most corrupt anywhere. In terms, not the people. I'm not talking about people at all. I'm talking about the rulers and what they've been, the schemes and the um, games that have been played to mask people's awareness. And that's finally coming to light. And so I really celebrate that. Wow, finally it's time. And it takes guts for someone to stand up to this in the face of so much um, opposition, so much finger pointing, so much demonization. And finally saying, well,
Yeah.
I'm doing this. Not for my own sake, not even for my country, but for people everywhere. And that's what I see. And so from that perspective, it's like I can look at what's happening underneath, and it's like this divine awakening is um, starting to show up more and more and more. And people are responding to that. People who've been blind, people who've been masked, literally, are finally saying, okay, time to take off that mask, time to see with true vision. Um, because, like you were saying, Avalina, when you've been pushed long enough against the wall and you have nothing left to lose, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. They actually finally took away the mask mandate in California recently. Not that I
Yay.
ever really wore one. Very rarely, actually, this entire time have I put on a mask. But yeah, it's interesting to see that people are removing it, and
Yeah.
it's amazing. Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? It's like the news isn't focusing, they've got something else to focus on now. So this whole story is falling apart by
yeah.
itself.
It's almost laughable. It's like, wait
Right,
a minute, what happened?
right,
Wait, where'd
right,
that story go?
right.
It just shows you the amount of manipulation that can take place in the media.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
yeah, and media has been synonymous with manipulation, with
Yeah,
propaganda.
yeah. I love the Amish interview that I brought this up before. That the Amish were being interviewed, this community, and they're like, how come you guys haven't got COVID? No one in your community. Like, well, we don't have TVs. I'm like, that's my favorite. It's like my favorite.
Love it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true.
So all kinds of stories, all kinds of stories. And um, it's like we're the biggest reality TV network in
Mm.
the entire cosmos. I wonder sometimes, in other parts of the universe and parts of the multiverse and parts of the cosmos, if there are other programs that are going on that we're just not aware of, because there's I have to think there must be, that we're gonna later realize, oh my goodness, there's the, whatever, some other form of being show where there's
Yeah,
something else happening.
yeah. I think there's
Yeah.
probably been a lot of different evolutions and different star systems similar to this, but I feel like this here, like the amount of transformation that's happening, the intensity and the quickness of it, uh, and the dramatic shift from going from 3D to and beyond, wherever we end up going, is probably been the most intense, like one of the most intense in the universe, which makes this
Yeah.
such an honor to be here.
It is. We're so fortunate to be here.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the movie. Like, if you imagine seeing the best movie, going to the theater and seeing the best movie ever made, and you get to play a role in it. You get to be a character in it.
Hmm.
Like,
Right.
how cool
Yeah.
is that?
And
Have you
everyone's
ever?
role is important. Your
Yeah,
role is critical to the unfolding
yeah.
of the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Well,
a
I
crystal, and every person is a facet, and you can't have the whole crystal unless every piece is there. Yeah.
hmm, right, right.
What were you
Well,
gonna say, Kiara?
In the Hindu tradition, they talk about this reality as a play, as the dance of life, and it's like it's an illusion in the sense that it's not real. Not that physicality is not real, but the drama is not real. And we give meaning to our personal story, to our personal drama, and make that real. So, what happens when we start detaching ourselves from that story? I wrote that play.
Yeah.
And somehow
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm acting in this drama. And then I'm
Yeah.
also watching the drama. So I'm the audience, I'm the writer, I'm the actor, and all of it. And then I'm
Yes.
the critic, finally, who says, well, that was
Yeah.
pretty.
That's the biggest piece. I'm
Yeah.
the critic, the
Yeah.
judgment,
Yeah,
the one that makes it wrong. Yeah.
right, right. All right.
Yeah. It's
And
so
either way, it's a position that you have to defend.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I do that a lot when I'm in the dream state. Because
Mm.
I've been an avid lucid dreamer since I was a child, and often in a dream I will jump around to every aspect to every character in the dream, to being me in the dream, to witnessing the whole dream, but not from any certain perspective. It's really really fascinating.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if we can
the
apply
family
that to every
constellation.
day.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's actually it's a powerful way of interpreting dreams. So
Mhm.
you identify with every character in the dream, including yourself, including your enemy, including the scenery, and saying, I'm this
Yeah.
and this and this and this. So then you're no longer identified with one fractal of life. Um, you're not stuck in a certain role because
Mhm.
that's what creates the drama. That's what creates the
Mm-hmm.
turmoil and the fear. When you feel like you're stuck in a certain role, there's no options, there's no way out, and I'm sunk.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm a victim.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
sort of like the biggest polarity that we're all, as a collective, seem to be overcoming is being that victim. Like you
Mm.
said before, being told what to do. We love rules, so many people, they don't want to step out and take that responsibility. And that's what's being forced to happen,
Yeah.
really stepping out of being told what to do and seeing our own empowerment. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I find that the journey has continued to surprise me with felt sense experiences, and I don't know if you're encountering any new felt sense experiences through these very powerful days lately. I'm just curious what's alive for you in the physical form.
Mm. You want to go first?
Well, actually, and Sean has heard me say this before. Since the 22, I've had strange. I had vertigo actually for like a day, about
Mm.
24 hours, and I've had just some waves of nausea. And sometimes the nausea will just last like 5 minutes. But it's interesting because I haven't had those type of symptoms. Uh, not since I first had a Kundalini awakening like over 10 years ago, like, I don't know, 11 or
Mm.
12 years ago. And when that came on originally, it was an intense detox period for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks of detox, vomiting. But I hadn't experienced anything like that since. But I mean, this wasn't nearly as intense, but it was just mild. I noticed mild waves of that, which I found very interesting. But
Mm.
I really
Mm.
felt like the 22 was the date of February 22 was a massive influx of energies that's going to continue, more waves, I think more like on the 22s of the next month, because we have the equinox and then even after that. Yeah, I think the next like 4 months, we're going to continue to see this
Well, did you
new
know
energy
that
coming in.
the 22nd of February was exactly when the first passage of the Pluto return happened?
Mm,
So when Pluto
Exactly.
returned to its natal position in the US chart, that was exactly February 22nd, 2022. So isn't that interesting? And
yeah,
two, the two, 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 two,
yeah,
two, 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 two. What does that two mean? It's like, is it duality, or is it emerging from
yeah.
duality into oneness?
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Right.
choice that Pluto puts before us.
Yeah. And there's so many things in that number too, because if you flip it upside, well, I don't know what they call that, and where you flip it upside down, it still reads 222, or if you flip it right to
Mm.
left, it still reads 222. Like there's a lot of different numerology aspects in that day as well, along with the astrology. Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed, but if you add up the 222 of 2022, it ends up adding up to let's see, 2 of 22 plus 2222. So it's 12, which if you add it up is 3. It's like there are all these
Mm.
ways of combine, like it's not even just the pattern of twos, it's the synergized aggregation of that energy
Mm.
of the twos.
And it was on a
Mm.
Tuesday.
Not that I have no numerology background, but yeah, it's on a Tuesday. So there's just a lot of energy alive in that um, space. I don't know. I felt just being absolutely pulled into um, a very deep meditative state as that
Yeah.
222 portal was arriving, and just to the exclusion of all other experiences. It was just like, nope, going inward. That's all I can do. It doesn't matter what's going on around me. I need to be inward. And then feeling incredibly intense energies moving through the physical form, shifting, changing things. And since then, have had even more powerful energies move through in meditation. It just seems that somehow this portal being open has shifted the energetic force to a different gear, I feel.
Mm.
How
Mm.
about you, Kiara?
Mm. Yeah. My, so you asked about my felt sense. Actually, what I'm feeling is not moving towards something, but away.
Mm,
Um, so, much of my life, I've had this really urgent sense of mission. It's like almost like, I have to go save the world. And it's
right.
like this big weight on my shoulders. It's not, I think a lot of us have carried that weight on ourselves. When we know that we're here to make a difference in this world, when we're here to serve, but because of a sense of feeling helpless and hopeless, that weight becomes heavier and heavier. And I feel like
Yeah.
that weight is just dropping away now, which is interesting because one aspect of that is that I don't feel like I have to do anything anymore. Yeah, I want to. I want to understand. Um, I want to be in the midst of everything that's going on, but there's no duty bound um, need for this, and that's
Yeah.
so liberating. So that's kind of and I see it as a cocooning. So the caterpillar is like busy running around, munching on leaves or doing whatever a caterpillar does. And then finally it's in this cocoon. All the senses are shut down. Um, I don't have the same level of urgency about things. I'm more of an observer, witnessing what's going on. But as the witness, in the state of cocooning and emerging into the next phase of butterflying, there's something else going on, which is that my identity, my sense of identity is no longer here in the, in this. cocoon of the four lower bodies. My identity is like something above, dropping in and infiltrating, uh,
Mm.
purifying, deepening, and and it requires an ability to surrender to what's wanting to come through.
Yeah.
Um, there was a time when that was difficult because I couldn't trust that. I felt like it was up to me to make everything happen.
Mm.
And part of what's happening with this cocooning, and as that weight is dropping away, it's not up to this personal self anymore. It's not up to this little
Wow.
tiny creature that sees everything in terms of right and wrong and good and bad, or, I'm responsible or I'm a victim. No, it's like so much bigger than that. And so what's happening almost spontaneously is a surrender to what I would call the Great Mother. And Gaia, Mother Earth, is an aspect of that. And so I'm feeling like, okay, I'm just surrendering to her as a living presence, not just
Mm.
a piece of rock floating in space, but
No.
a living
Yeah.
presence, a powerful, vital, evolved entity that's here to support this great evolution, this amazing universal uh, drama that's taking place right now. And that's
Yeah.
in some ways it's very freeing, in some ways it's like, what do I have to do now? So it almost feels like a loss because I'm not feeling the same agency about things anymore. I'm seeing from this perspective, from this vision, rather than being in the middle of it. And at the same time, it allows me, when the time is right, and I notice, like, um, there are times when that force comes through and things get said and done in ways I didn't expect, in ways that are powerful and effective and efficient, which couldn't happen just from this personal self. Other times I feel like, oh, there's nothing to do. I might as well just relax. And for the first time in many, many years, I'm able to relax. I'm able to walk by the
Mm.
seaside and just enjoy the beach and not have to think about, what I need to do and what I have to say and how I need to pull all these pieces together and, do my next YouTube video or whatever. It's like, yeah, I can just be by the sea and enjoy
Yeah.
the shells, pick up a few, beautiful shells along the beach and wade in the water
Mm.
and watch the sunset and feel the breeze. Wow. I mean,
That's
I know you
living.
guys.
This is
That's
the
beautiful.
experience of being human. I mean, this is the joy of getting to be in this physicality. And it brings me such joy to hear you able to surrender to the present joys that surround you without um, feeling like you are being called into something else. Just being able to really um, connect to the the physical journey in all of those forms.
Yeah, yeah. And you
Yeah.
know what the paradox is that um, if it came to a point where it was time to drop my body now, I'd be totally okay with it, even though I've never been more content and purposeful about being here on this earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the pressure's off.
The pressure's
Yeah.
off.
Yeah. And I was really
Yes. Yes.
relating to your sharing, Kiara, about that surrendering to that higher energy and the way, for me, it feels like, it's that more embodiment of the oversoul coming in, and that's what I've been feeling,
Hmm.
just surrendering
Yes.
to just the, not just the soul, the higher self, but really allowing that monad to come into the body. And I feel like
Hmm.
that's what's happening for a lot of us. And I do feel, just as you were saying, that it's almost like directly related to letting that pressure off. Because like you were saying, we all came in as, you know, light workers or star seeds or whatever you want to call it, with that, like that mission, like, and it's such a strong pull, and we put so much pressure on ourselves. And I'm seeing it a lot when I'm working with people. It's just, let it go. It's like when you take the pressure off of needing to change everything, and that you have to be of service, and that you have to go out and do all these things, and what's my purpose, how am I going to serve, and when you really relax into it, that's when you actually let the bandwidth of more energy to come in, because otherwise you're contracting. So I'm seeing so much of exactly what you were saying and feeling that myself, of just,
Yeah.
I don't have to have a purpose to go out and do. I don't have to go out and do anything anymore. It's like that.
Right.
That's sort of fallen away. And in the doing that, you start enjoying more of what is taking place.
Yeah,
And then you end up serving even more. It's so beautiful how it
it is.
how it happens. And yeah, I love it.
Like you don't
Well, I
need
mean,
to.
what's
Yeah,
that,
go ahead.
Kiara? Go ahead. Sorry, I think there was a delay. Go ahead, Kiara.
Oh, what I was going to say is that I don't feel the need to wake people up
Mm-hmm.
like I used to, because I'm trusting that people will wake up and are waking up naturally and spontaneously
Yeah.
of their own choice, and that this is a collective journey now. So it's actually from a place of deeper trust, um,
Mm-hmm.
where I can let people wake up in their own way without forcing something on down someone's throat, or feeling like they're making mistakes, or even concerning the deep state. I almost feel sorry for them,
Mm-hmm.
uh, because they have grown up with an idea of what it means to be an elite, to have that sense of responsibility for the world, even though there's a lot of things I have deep antipathy for. I mean, as a psychotherapist, I worked with people who are survivors of satanic abuse, and the stories they have to go through, and what happens in these cults is bizarre. And yet, I feel sorry for them, because what um, it's like when we can really experience someone not from a place of my own judgments towards them, but from a place where I can see them as they are. We're all innocent, we're all beautiful, we're all pieces of God. We're all playing a role in this great drama. There's actors who are villains, there's actors who are heroes and heroines. And it's still the same drama. It wouldn't be the same drama without both roles being played. And then at the end of the play, we just have a party together. So it's like, yeah, so if we can step outside of this drama right now, and have that space of compassion for everyone who's playing a part in this,
Mm-hmm.
that takes us out from duality, that takes us out from victimhood, and it takes us out from fear.
Yeah, I love what you said about trust, because the way I see trust, it's like when you trust, you can't have fear. It's like the antidote of
Right.
Mm-hmm.
and you
Yes.
could say like trust is also courage, because you don't really have to. When you trust, there's that the other can't exist, because you're just in that space of surrender, really, to knowing, that all is well.
And the trust is faith. It's
Mm-hmm.
faith that all is as it should be. That
Mm.
the trust is in the higher plan. The trust that you so beautifully mention, Avalina, is the knowing internally that all is held. And
Mm-hmm.
I love how we've been discussing this shift out of a need to do and into a place of surrender to the flow of what's moving through us. I mean, that is what you're saying, Avalina, is the connection with the monad and the becoming the higher self,
Mm.
so that there's no separation anymore. That there is simply what's moving through us in the physicality as the divine plan, and how blessed we are to get to experience how that feels. I mean,
Yeah.
in just a sense of spirit that's disconnected from the physicality. And here we are getting to experience this within a physical form. What a miracle. And how
Mm.
grateful we are to
Yeah.
be part of it.
Yeah, it feels amazing. I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling
Hmm.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that reminds me of the story that I heard about this Mughal emperor who had a contest. He invited all the artists in his empire to paint a picture of peace.
Mm.
And so, there are all these beautiful paintings and nice images and colors and, just peaceful, peaceful scenes. And then there was this one painting, which, there's all kinds of chaos going on, and wars and crazy stuff. And then in one corner of this, um, there's a high up on a tree, there's this nest, and this mother bird is, plucking a worm from wherever and feeding its babies, chicks. And it's like, that's his peace. And in the midst of the chaos,
Mm.
midst of all the craziness, you hold that space of trust
Yeah.
and acceptance.
Beautiful.
Acceptance not from a resignation, but acceptance in the sense that there's a divine plan, it's unfolding, and it's all perfect right now.
Yeah.
So perfect.
So
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, and I love how you brought in the acceptance piece because there's, it's not a form of weakness like some people would think surrender.
No.
When they don't understand the fullness of surrender, it's not from that place of victimhood. It's a place of empowerment.
Mm,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. It's a
Was
courageous opening.
Go ahead.
Oh, just that it's a courageous opening. It's just a surrender is a courageous opening to what's moving through, rather
Mm,
than a weak, passive. Oh, I give up. It's not, like you were saying, Avalina. It's not. It's not disempowering. There's a sense of very, very deep strength in surrendering,
yeah,
and sometimes
yeah.
people don't realize that.
Well, surrender in its truest meaning is active. It's not just
Yes.
passive resignation, it's an active alignment. So
Mm.
we have the choice as a personal self to align ourselves with something bigger than us, with the divine plan. And then we surrender to let that monad enter and move through us. But it's a powerful alignment.
Yeah.
Surrender is really, I don't like how that word has been misused. It's
Yes. Yeah.
been
Mm-hmm.
seen as a resignation, as
Yeah. Well,
seen
it's
as
used in
simply,
war, right? Oh, we
yeah,
surrender.
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
yeah,
that's probably where we get that,
right,
definition from. Yeah. A
right.
tainted view of it, which is,
Mm,
often happens, we know.
yeah. So I would
Everything's always turned
use the
around.
word alignment instead of surrender is like an alignment.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're surrendering is the personal self, and the alignment is to the universal self coming through and moving through us. Um, so that is powerful when we can allow that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it takes
Yeah.
strength.
It takes strength, it takes
Yeah.
courage,
Yeah.
yeah, and it takes psychological maturity because we have um, so many of us have had experiences in the past where we've mixed and confused those two things. And then we felt like we had to hold on and be strong. Otherwise, we get thrown under the bus or we get victimized or taken over.
Mm-hmm.
So, surrender has become this uh, identified with weakness. But we haven't really understood surrender. And I think that's what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really the dark night of the collective.
And that's what Pluto does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and from my understanding, the return of Pluto is like, it's not just like a quick dip. It's, several years
That's right.
process. Yeah.
Right. right.
Well, and it's such a big
Yeah.
energetic shift. I mean, it has been in the previous times that this positionality has come up. And so, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this is a big time of transformation on a grand scale.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing about Pluto, I find interesting, is the smallest of the planets. It's smaller than Mercury, it's smaller than anything, it's smaller than some of the moons of Jupiter or Saturn. But it's got
Well,
such a
they weren't even calling it a planet, right? I mean, they weren't
right,
even allowing it to be called a planet,
right, right. But
whoever
it's
they is.
whoever they is. And yet, Pluto
We love that word.
represents a soul. You know, what seems to be so insignificant and yet is the most powerful of all things.
Yes,
Isn't that always the case? Isn't that it's so interesting?
right.
Yeah.
Mm.
Beautiful.
And that's what it
I love
does
how you
to
said that.
humans. You know, we have looked at ourselves as being so insignificant and little worms crawling in the dust, and yet we
Mm-hmm.
are powerful beyond measure, as Marianne Williamson puts it.
Yeah. Or the
Yeah.
expression, well, I'm only human.
Yeah, right.
Only.
Only.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most potentially powerful uh, physical beings in the universe.
Yeah.
But we're only human.
Well, you know, one thing I've heard is that there's galactic races everywhere that
Yeah.
um, recognize that we as a species have the most diversity in terms of our DNA of almost any
Yeah.
of the
Hmm.
galactic races. And that makes us very special. So
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
little planet and this one little solar system and one little galaxy and this tiny little race of humans has the potential to change the course of the universe because of who we are, because of our DNA,
Yeah.
because of something powerful which can move through us and create through us if we allow that.
Hmm. Yeah. So
And
much
the ripple
potential.
out universally is massive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of
We
like
don't
what
realize the ripple out.
yeah. And it's kind of
Yeah.
like
Go
what we
ahead.
were saying about the potential. It's like wherever we want to go, like that DNA is going to allow us, to, break off in many different ways, and really create whatever we want to create with our, uh, how we want to live physically. I think we're going to see a
Yeah.
lot of interesting diversity happening uh,
Mm,
amongst
mm,
humans, which is
yeah. Yeah.
fascinating.
Well, earlier, Avalina, you're talking about your relationship with food.
Hmm.
Mm.
And that's one
I'm
of the
so
things.
glad you brought this up because I wanted to talk to you about this.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Say
Um,
more.
yeah, so my relationship with food has been, well, I would say it's diminishing quite substantially, and that I'm feeling, and I've known this for many many years. When I first heard about breatharianism, that it resonated with me. I was like, oh, okay, that's definitely a potential for me. And it's
Mm,
really I'm feeling more and more like my body is just not wanting food. Like it's almost repelling food.
mm,
Whenever I eat, it's just like ugh, like, and I'm just the loss of hunger. And I wanted to talk to you about because I know you have gone through that stage of being a breatharian. And when you transitioned from, the food is not like the food to me seems more easy because I've done over the years many many fasts, long term fasts, but the water aspect of the dry fast,
yeah.
and from my understanding, like the dry fast, what happens is when you're because water has so much memory, right? It's crystal. It holds
Mm.
so much information. It holds everything, so much memory. I mean, going back, eternity. So when you dry fast, that you're expelling, because you go through that period of dehydration, that you're
Mm,
expelling all the water. It's like you're expelling all the old patterns, all the old memories, and you're letting all that go. So it's a huge piece of the clearing of the body and the allowing for more embodiment, more higher energies to come in. And then when you start to drink water again, obviously to really program that first drink of water, because that's what's going to be replenishing your body. So how did you go through that process of, did you go through a dry fast, or did you just kind of gradually deplete? Because I've heard it done both ways.
Yeah. Well, at one point I met this woman, Jasmine. She's Australian, and she was talking about living on light, and I thought, okay, this is what I want to do. And then other things happened. I didn't follow that route. And then things started happening more spontaneously. It's like you're saying, your appetite for food started to drop away. So it was happening more organically.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, like here I'm on this beautiful beach. There's like a dozen coconut trees in my garden here. And so I've been eating basically coconuts and drinking coconut water. And coconut water is the same constitution as our blood. So it's like the memory of, I would say, the memory of Gaia, emerging through this majestic palm, entering into the coconut itself, and then drinking that water as a living memory, and allowing that to permeate through the cells without interfering with that in any way. So so right now I'm not eating food, I'm just drinking lots and lots of coconuts, coconut waters.
Beautiful.
So it's like what you're saying about loosening up the old memories that have to do with fear, shame, memories that have to do with restriction, limitation, memories that have to do with loss of freedom and being victimized. It's part of a human race. We've been traumatized for generations with all these memories. So memory has taken on a negative connotation. But what is memory really? A soul memory is very different. A soul memory has to do with who we are, not what we've done, not what we've experienced. And so that memory is awakening now. So I think there's a transition that we're making. Each of us will make it in a different way. Sometimes it's, directly through some kind of breatharian or, pranic nourishment. Sometimes it'll just be spontaneous. It's what happens when you align yourself with something bigger than yourself, when you truly and totally surrender the needs of the personal self. It's not that being human is anything to be avoided or to be rejected. It's like you were saying, it's so much bigger than we've thought it is. And we are replacing the old memory with the new memories of who we are in potential. And then once we recognize that and allow for that, all kinds of things start to happen. Teleportation, levitation, and manifestation, and like you're talking about lucid dreaming and being able to travel in your astral bodies and your soul bodies to remember and experience and participate in things that that are in alignment with your purpose here. So that's what it means for me to be human. And so when you're talking about releasing the old memories in our DNA, I think that's very much a part of it. I'm reminded of that movie, and I know you've seen that, Lucy.
Oh, yes, I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, have you seen that, Shaunna?
Lucy, I'm thinking more. You're not talking about like the Lucille Ball movie because that doesn't. No, this is a different one.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm guessing I haven't seen it.
Well, if you had seen it, you would know.
What's it about?
Yeah.
You want to say something on that, Avalina?
It's been a while since I've seen it, but she sort of dissolves, I guess you could say, in a nutshell. She dissolves all um, into the all the knowing. So she dissolves into um, it's done in a synthetic way, like through an IA way in the movie, but essentially she dissolves into the all that is, and she's everywhere.
Huh.
She's in
Yeah.
all
Wow.
So
things.
basically, it's like, the movie starts off with what it means to be experiencing maybe 3%, 4% of who we are in our genetic
Hmm.
capabilities. And then, I won't go into the story, but what happens is she starts to experience more and more of her genetic capacities. So, what does it look like when she's at 10% or 20 or 30 or 50 or 100? And then at
Wow.
100%, like dissolving into that allness, and not losing yourself, but becoming everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like,
Wow.
yeah, our fear is that I'm going to lose myself. But really, I'm not going to lose myself. I'm going to
You're
become
gaining. Yeah.
gaining
Yeah.
self.
Absolutely. Sounds like a great movie. I'm gonna have to go watch it.
It's a Hollywood movie, so it's violent and but the general theme is amazing. It's so beautiful.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting to see how Hollywood has little whiffs here and there of universal truths that we think
Mm,
are just fiction and fantasy and wow, wouldn't this be cool? And yet so many of those storylines or elements of what is considered fantasy are actually becoming our reality
yeah,
the more we
yeah,
continue to evolve. It's very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
yeah.
they like to tell us the truth sometimes in movies. Their train of thought is they have to put it out there, right? Like, oh, you were told, and it may not always be the way we think we're going to be told, but you can actually learn a lot through some of these Hollywood movies.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah,
talked about the media and how the media, tends to bring things out that are misleading, but then there are these elements that actually have some universal truth. And so it's fascinating to me to have you bring forward yet another example of that. Just the
mm.
Hmm.
juxtaposition of what stories come through.
Hmm.
Yeah. That also reminds me of Powder. Do you ever see that movie?
Yes, that was a really good movie too. Yeah.
I
Yeah, again,
remember that movie. I don't think I ever saw it, but I remember the ads for it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. He also dissolves into light.
Yeah.
This lightning bolt in the last scene. This lightning bolt comes down, and he you know, just becomes everything.
Mm.
So yeah, but I mean, that is such a beautiful illustration of who we are and where we're going.
Hmm. Yeah, and there's
Yeah.
many ways to get there. Like we were
Mm,
talking about just living off prana. You know,
Hmm.
it's not like that's a necessity. Like there's many ways up the mountain. So
right,
um,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. So what is a necessity? What are some of the things that you feel are needed before we can actually let go of our attachments to the personal self?
Good question. Um, well, I think we touched on faith earlier. That's something I think we need the faith in what we feel.
Mm,
Because as you were saying earlier, Kiara, and I know that Avalina and I have touched on this before in our previous conversations, but just the act of surrender is a choice. And so I think if we're releasing attachments, it's a commitment to the choice of holding faith.
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think you know as a foundation, everyone really has to get in touch and um, looking at their emotional body, because that to me is like you really can't go anywhere until you start processing your emotions and taking like responsibility for what you're feeling. Because as you were saying earlier about memories, the human, not the soul memory, but the human memory is mostly based on our emotions. Like we remember the things that we got emotional about, and we tie to those, traumas and all these things. The emotional part of it is the physical, because the emotional body is the closest to the physical body,
Yeah.
right? It's that layer in between the physical and the mental. So really taking responsibility for everything that you're feeling rather than projecting, that to me is essential. Like the emotional body, allowing all that density in the emotional body and patternings and recognizing that in yourself is a necessity, I would think,
Mm.
for me, what I see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think if you're on the path of spiritual maturity, psychological maturity or emotional maturity has to be a
Mm-hmm.
prerequisite.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, we're living out of glamour, we're living out of denial, we're living out of separation, we're living out of, splitting ourselves off into different aspects and then judging some aspects and getting addicted to other aspects. We treat ourselves like we treat everybody else. Um, that we're split, we're flawed, and therefore we attack each
Mm-hmm.
other and aspects of ourselves. I mean, isn't that what cancer is about?
Yeah.
And we've
Anger
become a
too. Yeah.
cancer on the face of this earth. So, to me, psychological maturity is about embracing all of that, embracing ourselves first, embracing each other, embracing whatever is going on this planet as one divine force in an organic cycle of evolution. So it's not easy because I know we take things personally. We are taught to um, to feel all these things which have to do with shaming and blaming
Mm-hmm.
and judging. And what does it take to get beyond that so we can embrace without judging? So embracing my emotions, embracing my fears, but not judging them. I think that's part of what embracing really means. But what we often do is this is okay, this is not okay. It's okay to feel compassion and love, even if I'm not actually experiencing it. But it's not okay to feel anger or hate.
Mm.
Um, but that's all part of being human. If I can embrace that emotion as part of being divine, without at the same time allowing it to take over and come out
Mm.
as rage or come out as self-flagellation or whatever. So emotional maturity, um, to me, feels really important as we evolve into spiritual maturity. I mean, that's two
Yeah.
different things, and that's only the first step.
Right. Then there's the
Then after
mental.
that,
Then you
then
apply
there's
the same
that.
thing, the responsibility to the mental body. What are you thinking? And yeah,
Hmm.
it's a continual process that ripples out to subtler and subtler aspects of yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a journey of being able to be in relationship with all of those aspects
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
hold all of them with love, even with the other emotions included. Like that love can hold all of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I've realized is that it's almost impossible to make that journey without having a community of people around us that can hold us, embrace us in this
Oh, so
non-judgmental
important.
way. I
Yeah.
I couldn't do it by myself. I mean, I wouldn't
Yeah.
be able. I've got so many blinders.
Yeah.
So
It's
unless someone
tough.
else can
Yeah.
be a reflection, um, yeah, it
It can
is
be a
tough.
very solo journey. Uh, and that can be very lonely. There was a time frame for years where I was, on my own, working on myself and just, focused inward. And it can get really lonely.
Mm.
And like it kind of gets you can kind of get sad, not sad like sorry for yourself, but just this like, wow, you know, like I'm really doing this all on my own, you know. And it's it can be yeah,
Lonely.
having community is huge in the process. I mean, it makes it so much more having that mirror back at you, you know, and reflecting is just makes it such a more enjoyable process. And seeing, you know, being able to feel the community and feel that where we're actually going as a collective is, you know, that's what kind of keeps you going. You know, it keeps you that inspiration. Yeah.
Well, as we vibrate our frequency, it certainly helps sustain our frequency when we align with others who are resonating similarly. We feel supported and buoyed almost. It's sort of like we don't have to carry the frequency by ourselves, that, you know, others can be holding the note with us. And even if others aren't resonating exactly the same, there is a support there that is felt. You can feel it, and it just brings a bit of relief, a bit of camaraderie, maybe. Just like we're all evolving together, even though we're not really separate, but yet sometimes there is the memory of separateness. And so as we continue to vibrate that way, then it feels more connective. Somehow the connective piece gives strength.
Yeah.
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 We're not
And
wolves.
no.
We're not meant to be a lone wolf. We're meant to be in packs.
Yeah, the time of the lone wolf is over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what I'm realizing is it does take courage to be able to um, remain vulnerable with other people. Because if I'm trying to create community with other people based on trying to present myself in a certain way as this,
Right.
evolved and spiritual person, sooner or later I'm going to hit a roadblock, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be able to get past that. So that um, vulnerability in terms of recognizing that the same story that runs through me runs through you, and therefore I can have compassion for myself and for you. Um, that's
Yeah.
the beginning of
Yeah,
relationship.
and it's that surrendering, like we were saying before, of allowing yourself to be vulnerable and just to be authentic, because that's where you're going to find yourself.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's almost one of the hardest pieces to surrender to, is allowing yourself to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
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 That our authenticity is more powerful than we realize. That sometimes when we try to present something that it looks different to others, that perhaps that is a way of separating our true self from what really is. And so when we allow the vulnerability, we allow the authenticity to pull resources magnetically to us that we wouldn't have been able to access with that separation barrier.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's just being human, like we were saying before. Like, what is it to be human? You
Mm.
know, and that's it. You have to allow yourself to be human.
Love how we're bringing the beginning to the full circleness of this conversation. It's so beautiful.
But speaking of full circle, I realize we've been going for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So I don't know what time limits you have for your for
Time
your
doesn't
view.
exist anymore over here.
No, time doesn't
I don't know
exist,
about
and
you
we
guys,
we
but
are
I can't keep up with time at all. I can't even remember what I
no.
did yesterday, so.
No, exactly. And what a gift that we can go on for hours and never get either tired or run out of things to talk about, because there's so much richness here in this community
Yeah.
setting.
Well, that's
Yeah.
what I like about this. When I started this, I was tired. I've been walking for hours, and I've been bitten by mosquitoes, and so then it's like once we started talking and connecting, and stepping into this other perspective of who we are, it's like there's so much energy now.
Yeah, so much prana comes in. It's like that
Yes.
conscious conversation just allows for like that pure raw energy, and you can just go on it for hours. Like we could sit here and talk for hours and not get tired.
Yeah, yeah.
It's our
Yeah,
shared resonance.
yeah,
We're buoying each other just by vibrating together here.
Right. Imagine, part of the purpose for this conversation being recorded is that so we can consciously, you know, participate in a greater community of people
Yes.
who are
mm-hmm.
all speaking the same thing, who are all growing and evolving, all struggling through the same old stuff, all, you know, having our issues with what's going on in the world, one side or the other, all with our judgments and fears. But somehow in this shared space, we can start letting go and start coming into space of trust, alignment, and balance.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah,
So beautiful. Well, we so appreciate being together today. It's just
yeah.
been such a joy to connect with you all.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Definitely going to have to do this again.
Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah. Perhaps weekly.
I'm open. I mean, as long as I have time, and I'm
Yeah,
right now, I feel like
Beautiful.
everything that I was doing in the past is all kind of fading. I'm not traveling like I used to. I'm not teaching. I'm not writing. I'm not doing anything really.
yeah,
But this is what gives me, juice
yeah.
right now.
This is where the juice
Oh,
is right now. So we'll just keep going with that
absolutely.
until the juice ends up flowing somewhere else. Who knows?
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you both. It was such a joy. Such a joy.
Yeah.
Such a joy. Such deep gratitude. Just
Mhm.
so wonderful to be here all together.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you
yes.
for being yourselves and being who you are through the journey.
Hmm. No greater place than this earth to be. No greater moment than this right now.
Yeah.
Greater community than what we are creating here together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
So
just the
much love.
beginning. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
Love and
so to be
blessings.
continued. Hmm. Until next.
Till next time.
Yeah.